Hello, everybody. October 28th, 2025. This is the College Countdown here on a Tuesday. I am your host, Josh Neighbors. Follow me on Twitter at Josh Neighbors _. You can also find the show at CC Podcast JN. The show is wherever you guys get your podcasts and on YouTube as well. Once again, still waiting for the laptop to come, so we'll be out of this space in a short amount of time, to let you all know that. Jack Allen will be on the show tomorrow. He is at Jack Allen TV. Like the video, sub to the channel. That always helps when you all do those things. And on today's show, we'll be discussing the Brian Kelly firing at LSU from the sense of when are the coaching contracts going to stop being as big? When are they going to stop giving these guys 10-year contracts and guaranteeing them? And I think there's an interesting comparison in the world of baseball that we can look at to kind of shine some light on. And then look at the college football playoff as well, as we are hurtling towards the first rankings of the CFP as we are 7/8 weeks into the season. Some teams are already taking bye week number 2 here pretty soon on the year. So we'll take a look at that as well. Once again, leave your comments, like the video, sub to the channel. Those things always help. All right, so let's do it. When will college costs go down? So college coaching costs go down. Brian Kelly was fired this past weekend, and as everybody knows at this point, I was thinking about the way to approach this. And there's a variety of ways. Some of the stuff that we already hit on during the James Franklin firing, I think is relevant because I'm not going to do the LSU side of this. I work in Arkansas. I know about LSU and well, but not as well as a lot of other people do, including our own guest, our own friend Jack. One of our hosts, Jack Allen, who's with me on Wednesdays. Jack grew up in that stadium. Jack handed out flyers in that game programs in that stadium growing up, and he knows much more than me off the bat. So he's somebody to talk about the future of the program and whatnot. I think more of the big picture idea for me is Brian Kelly is number 2 in what could be 3 potentially $100 million swings, which is, at Penn State, we know it's going to cost $50 million to get rid of James Franklin. And then we'll see what it costs to bring in a new coach. If they pick somebody that, is well-known, big name, it's going to cost to get them. Also, if it's somebody that other teams want as well. Also, Brian Kelly, $50 million swing. We know it's still being negotiated, not done yet, but could cost upwards of $100 million and for the entire staff change as well. And then I think Florida State could be in that same area code. And not that every single team, firing somebody's making $100 million swings, but there are some swings that are going to be 30, 40, 50, depending on what the school is, what the buyout is. Auburn might be making a change. We already know Florida's making a change. UCLA, Oklahoma State, Virginia Tech. I mean, there are more and more down the line. Michigan State could be in that category as well. And then there's all the jobs that open after coaches leave, which those schools aren't making the all-out change, but they're still having to make a change. And it might some of them might end up breaking even depending on what the coach buyouts are and whatnot. But just being mindful of that. And so I think the question is that when are we going to stop seeing coaches get 10-year contracts? Because to me, like, Brian Kelly was a good hire, a good coach. We know he's a good coach. We saw him win at Cincinnati. We saw him win at Notre Dame. And usually guys that win in multiple places are pretty good bets. Your Lance Leipold's, your Chris Kleinman's, your, guys like that. Are usually very, very good bets, right? There's more examples of this, obviously, Matt Campbell, like some of those more developmental coaches, guys just work their way up, the non-coordinator hires. The coordinator hires work, but, for places like Kansas and places like Kansas State and then Iowa State, and those guys, the program builders can be pretty safe bets because they've got to build. That's what they've got to do. And Brian Kelly built Notre Dame into, consider all things considered with their academic standards, like a modern power with the way that things are different now. Notre Dame is not the brand. It's an amazing brand, but, talent is not flocking there like it used to in relation to the rest of the teams, right? Everybody else is caught up to them. Same thing for Nebraska, caught and surpassed, and USC, to some extent as well. And he did a great job there, obviously, getting them into the championship game, and Marcus Freeman's picked up right where he's left off, but they've changed some things. So Brian Kelly with the standards there. The issue for him is that he's just kind of a jerk. And when you're a jerk, that routine, and you're a jerk and you're an outsider, that routine rolls, it kind of ends up being a bit it gets on people's nerves faster, right? It wears on people. The Buzz Williams, the Eric Musselmans, those guys who just grind on you. It can be really difficult to have people like that in the building sometimes, and that's why those guys, usually will do shorter stints in places, and sometimes the curmudgeonness increases as people get older. So I think that's something that you got to be aware of as well when it comes to this. But kind of on the point of of like this looked like a good hire, but you can pay him a lot of money. But why would you give him a 10-year contract? Because a decade's a long time, and things change very quickly, especially the 12-team playoff. Now, if you're going to be more reactionary, sign shorter contracts. And if money is no object, that's fine. But I have a tough time believing that every single time a school wants to make this happen, that they're going to be able to make it happen like every single time. And I'm wondering how many times we can make the offering plate thing work, because it is quite literally the offering plate analogy. What happens every time that we have these firings is on Sunday, the plate gets passed around the big donors. And what ends up happening, guess what? They find the money somewhere. It's that Ross Dellinger article he wrote the other day where one LSU source says, I'm not sure where the money is coming from. And then another LSU source said, hey, we'll be able to find it. No worries. How long is that sustainable for? Maybe it is. Maybe it's just, maybe I'm off here. But I think about other sports, and like the only other place where you see long-term contracts is, like baseball, like the other the salary caps monitor this. But like baseball is a weird one because they have so much team control, and then once guys get paid, they can get paid for long times. And baseball, they don't mind throwing away the end of contracts. I've actually pulled up the biggest contracts in Major League Baseball to make this point. So if you go and you look, Juan Soto, number one, largest contract in history. And at this time, he is 27 years old. So we're in 2025. He's 27 years old. This contract runs through 2039. So that's 14 years away. And he's going to end up being 41 years old. So you're going to eat the back part of that contract. But I guess you're okay doing it in this situation. Vladimir Guerrero Jr., 14-year contract. He's 26 years old, right? That was signed back in it kicks in 2026 is the extension. 2039 is when it ends, right? Mike Trout's will end in 2030. He is already dealing with injuries. I know he's not like super old, right? Let's see, 34, but his body is really broken down on him. And the back part of that contract, the Angels are already beginning to eat. So you're seeing what we're talking about here is that these contracts are long in baseball, but at least for baseball, who's getting paid here, who's getting money here are the players, right? It's the labor. And I think that's what we're starting to realize is the money really should be focused on the Jimmies and the Joes. The issue for LSU is they can't block anybody, and they've been unable to block anybody for the last 2 years. And yeah, they could get better coordinators. Like I think Blake Baker's a very good coordinator, but Colin Klein kind of kicked his ass this past week. I think our man at Penn State actually, I think both Penn State coordinators are good, but turns out the personnel they got just, weren't good enough, and the guys kind of let go of the rope. And like in the end, you can put it on the coach. The coach makes a ton of money. I'm totally fine with that. But it's about having the players. Like you need the guys to be good enough. You can change attitudes, can change all you want. Attitude matters a lot. But in the end, it is the quality of the players that really matters. Now, picking the right quality of guys in the right quality of space, that's building any roster, any sport, right? That's why trade deadlines exist, where, a team needs a right-handed bat, a left-handed bat, a 3-and-D guy, another big man, whatever it is, a third down pass rusher, an interior tackle. Like whatever the sport is, the trade deadline is a way for you to bolster that roster. In college football, man, you build the roster, and it's like the roster is the roster. It's funny. The more I think about football, the more the two football sports are incredibly similar. And this is something that Greg Stanke looked into a while ago. The idea that, it's like this top 20 promotion, relegation, the rich in the sport being the rich get richer. Like the Champions League is built off the fact that PSG, Paris Saint-Germain, the big club out of Paris, will be playing Real Madrid, will be playing Manchester United, will be playing Liverpool. You get amazing stories sometimes, but in the end, it's usually big, sexy brands like Real Madrid, Barcelona, Bayern Munich, PSG, Chelsea, Man U, Liverpool, Arsenal, like those are the big teams that end up playing. And that's how the TV makes money. That's why it's such a big money deal. Not only that, the hiring and firing cycles in those sports are now very much akin to college football. Like they're just kind of spinning the wheel. And also like that big money gets spent in the transfer. They have a transfer window. We have a transfer portal. They've got the transfer window, right? They have the transfer windows. And actually, just like football, they've got one in the summer and then they've got one in the winter. Now, theirs line up with the off seasons. It just so happens their off seasons also line up with the American school, class schedules as well. And so I think that's one interesting concept to look like is the way that stuff matches up. And these they pay obscene transfer fees to get these players, which like isn't even the contract. It's like you're buying the player. Buying the player is costs a ton. And some of these teams have rich owners, just like like these Newcastle United, the Saudi wealth fund owns Newcastle. They can pour as much money into it. Like this is not an investment for them where they really care about ROI. And a lot of these donors and boosters don't care about ROI. And I do lament the way kind of corporate America is as a business. But like this is not a business. They are not running this like a business. The people who run the sport are running it like a business. The people that are in charge of making hiring and firing decisions at these universities are not acting like this is business because the only ROI for them are wins and losses. And that's on a player basis as well. And that's on a coaching basis as well. Now, look, you make a lot of money if you win games, totally. But like you can't argue to me that there's financial like you're LSU's still making decent money. Health of the program, sure. I mean, you could make a change. But the fact that Brian Kelly didn't even see the second half of his 10-year contract is crazy to me. I don't mind you paying him a lot. I don't mind you guaranteeing a lot of the money, but why would you guarantee 90% of a 10-year contract? Like, you got to be sure that's the guy. I mean, it just makes no sense unless it is funny money, unless you are like the Saudi wealth fund. And I'll tell you this, and I've said it before, I will say it again. I am not going to be surprised if I think it might be just a matter of if not when of private equity getting involved. I mean, we already heard about North Carolina having Michael Lombardi go over to Saudi Arabia to scout out the potential of getting private equity involved, and private equity over there being the Saudi wealth fund, right? We heard about the Holiday Bowl potentially going to Riyadh and then the ACC ultimately shooting it down. But like they're starting to ask. And if we're in a space where decisions are being made for this much money, why wouldn't private equity eventually be involved? And the good news for these schools and good news for these administrations right now is the fact that the viewership is up. And the way the state of the sport is, increasing these conference games, like they're putting out a good product. The sport's pretty even too, to be honest, which I like. But my question is, does that end at any point? And you could say, Josh, does it even matter? But like, let's focus on paying the players. Let's balance it both. If we're going to treat this thing like a pro sport, in a lot of the ways that we do, why isn't the coaching carousel treated that way? Another thing too is a lot of times we hear people say that players should have incentive-based contracts. No, if the coach is getting fully guaranteed in this cash, why shouldn't the players? And I know I got to mention the agents as well. There's a part of this, and I want this explained to me. There's obviously a lot happening here, but there's another part of this I want explained to me is this is an NBA thing, like the idea of the handcuff contract, right? So you like Jordan Crawford is available. This is an old NBA player, went to Xavier, I think. He has the same agency as John Wall had. Well, Jordan Crawford's contract's up the year before John Wall. And to make John Wall's agent happy, you got to give Jordan Crawford a big deal and re-sign him really nicely so you make sure you get John Wall on the back end. I just don't agree with that. I understand there's politics. I really do. But at a certain point, if you're not comfortable paying $12 million, it's like, guys, if we're going to tack 3 more years on and give a coach a boost from 10 to 12, like it's not a ton, but also, that's $2 million that could be used to and you're a team that's paying a coach $10 million a year, which means you want to be competing to play in the playoff at that point in time. If you're paying a coach that much, but if you're in that area, if you're an AD, you got to make the argument. You got to make the case. Is this the best idea with our money? If we pick this great coach and other schools want him, yes, he's great, but does that mean we can go and find a way to sustain this with somebody else? Because maybe that $2 million or the money that you free up extra, maybe the next coach you don't have to pay $10 million. Maybe you can use that money to improve your roster. Like, I think there's a great argument. I think the world of Eli Drinkwitz. I'm a Missouri guy. I think the world of him. I think he is an amazing, amazing coach. I think he manages the games well. I think that he gets players motivated. I think he's gotten really good players. I think he's hitting the portal really well. I'm a huge fan of his. But like, the thing is at Missouri, like, it's not my money. I guess I don't care, but I don't need to see him get a 12-year contract and, $12 million a year. Because to be honest, I'd rather them go and try and find another good coach. Like, they had a Gary Pinkel. They had a bad with Barry Odom, but they got right back to Eli Drinkwitz. And so they had good, bad, good. And, if the donors are serious and they're able to find another good coach, they can still put good rosters out there. And so they can maybe spend more money on the roster. And I think that's something that these schools need to consider is like, what's the roster to coach balance? If we're going to be in a non salary cap type era, right? But I really think that's something we have to evaluate is, will these costs ever go down? Something we have to assess. And maybe the answer is no. Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe I'm off here. But if I am one of these schools, I really do believe, I really am a believer that, like, you can still win. The roster will ultimately dictate it, right? I mean, the roster will ultimately dictate it because Andy Kotelnicki is a good coach. Totally forgetting on the defensive coordinator's name that Serblitz a lot, whatever his face is. At Penn State. But I mean, those are two guys I really think are awesome coordinators. And like, I think James Franklin's a good coach. They just couldn't get it going. They just could not get it going this year and had a really bad stretch. And now they're all facing a spot where they should be going. This stuff's a coin flip. But the one thing that's not a coin flip, and look, talent evaluation can be hard, but like, getting a lot of good players typically is going to make your team good. I mean, Texas Tech they might not have hit on everybody. The quarterback situation's rough. Barron Morton has been unable to stay healthy. Will Hammond's now out. And so maybe that's the error. But like, you keep building decent rosters and you keep repeating and over again, keep giving yourself cracks, you're going to get there. And I think that's what you're seeing at Ole Miss. Ole Miss is a great example this year. You have a good coach. You keep paying that good coach. You keep getting good players. And look, is this roster as good as last year's roster? No, but you're not just in a vacuum. The other teams across the country, in my opinion, are not as good as some of the teams that we saw last year. Last year's Texas was better than this year's Texas. Last year's Ohio State, in my opinion, was better than this year's Ohio State, even though they are a total hammer. Last year's Georgia, you could argue, is better than this year's Georgia, and I know Beck played, but like, you could argue, hey, if Stockton had the entire year, that team could have been better. I really do. This year's Alabama is definitely better than last year's Alabama. I would say that, like, that's the one difference here is that last year's team, is that not as good. Maybe this year's Miami as well, but are they overwhelmingly better? No, I mean, I don't think like A&M number 3 in the country, they're better than last year's number 3 team. I don't know if the answer is yes. But you keep building good rosters and the opportunity that will come. We lamented Ole Miss last year because they kind of crapped the bed and that was their chance to make the CFP. Well, guess what? The schedule ended up turning out being pretty good for them and they've been well coached and their team has been good enough in all of these spaces. But the reality is, like, they're knocking on the door of a CFP. So I think we have to consider that. We'll do some playoff stuff tomorrow. Let's hear a quick word from our sponsors.
Gambling problem? Call 1-800.
Let's go there.
One play can change a season. One upset can silence a stadium. With every snap, the stakes get higher, and no one brings you closer to the action than DraftKings Sportsbook, the #1 sportsbook for live betting. From live betting to odds, boosts, and so much more, DraftKings Sportsbook has everything you need to stay in the action from kickoff to the final whistle. New customers, this one is for you. Bet just $5, and if your bet wins, you'll get paid out $300 in bonus bets instantly. Own every Saturday with DraftKings. Download the DraftKings Sportsbook app and use code NEIGHBORS. That's code NEIGHBORS to turn $5 into $300 in bonus bets if your bet wins. In partnership with DraftKings, the crown is yours. Gambling problem? Call 1-800-GAMBLER. In New York, call 877-8-HOPE-NY or text HOPE-NY 467-369. In Connecticut, help is available for problem gambling. Call 8887-897777 or visit ccpg.org. Please play responsibly. On behalf of Boot Hill Casino and Resort, Kansas. 21 plus age and eligibility varies by jurisdiction. Fees may apply in Illinois, void in Ontario. Bonus bets expire 7 days after issuance. See sportsbook.draftkings.com/promos. NFL Sunday ticket offer for new subscribers only and auto renews until canceled. Digital games and commercial use excluded. Restrictions apply. Additional NFL Sunday ticket terms at youtube.com/go/NFL Sunday ticket/terms. Limited time offer.
All right, folks, that will do it for today's show. Make sure you follow us on Twitter at @JoshNeighbors_. You can find the show at CC Podcast JN. It's wherever you guys get your podcasts and on YouTube as well. Like the video, sub the channel. Jack and I will see y'all tomorrow.